Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and life coach Wendy Dillard here. Today is Tuesday, February 27th, 2018, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, your second daily dose of happy for the day. And I am moving myself into a happier zone than I was an hour ago, Wendy, because I finally decided, okay, enough of messing around with this computer. It's time to get a new one. So right after this show, I'm going right out and I'm buying a new one.
Wow, that is a milestone.
It is
a milestone, Walt. Good for you, and good for our listeners, and good for me, and good for all our co-hosts. You have worked so diligently in trying to get your existing computer to do what you wanted, and it's not playing well with you.
No.
I'm so glad that you're getting a new one.
I mean, after a while, you have to say enough is enough, especially when you've lost about 15 days of productivity over the last 3 months, and you add it all up and you say, well, that's probably more than the cost of the computer.
Oh, that's awesome. Yay.
So
yay.
We'll have to put up today with a little bit more in terms of those little tweaky, sound glitches that happen. But hopefully with tomorrow, it's all going to be gone. That'll be a good thing. So that's my day, actually. I can't even say it's my win for the day. That's my day. That's the entire day has been devoted to that. I've been taking backups to make sure that everything is saved.
Yeah, I get that. I know it's a big ordeal, but what a huge decision for you.
It is. I kind of wish I'd made the decision earlier. I'm doing the best I can. I'm learning as well as I can, but, it took me a while. And I got to remember that one.
But you know what? We're playing with law of attraction here. And so when you look at it through that lens, sometimes you require an additional amount of contrast for you to get such a level of clarity you can make the decision that you made.
Yeah, that's a very nice way of looking at it, actually. I like that. It's better than the way that I tend to have looking at it, which is sometimes I need a 2x4 to the side of the head before I make the change.
Well, and I just like to look at that in a different
right.
way. It's a 2x4. But I'm like, you just needed bigger contrast because you require bigger clarity. Clarity is all that matters, right?
I definitely got the contrast. I can't complain about that. The contrast came through loud and clear today. So thank you for the contrast.
Okay, and so now does that mean for you that the clarity is there?
Well, let's just say it's certainly a lot more clear than it was yesterday. So, I mean, there's at least a large degree of increase in clarity. I'm always a little bit hesitant to say I have full clarity because I always seem to get a little bit more clarity than I had the day before.
Well, to me, making a decision definitely warrants that there's clarity.
Yes.
Because you're not on the fence about buying a new computer anymore, right?
No, I'm past that. And in fact, I can't get it soon enough now. Literally, as soon as we're done here, I'm closing up shop. And Louise, let's go. We're going to go buy a computer.
Wonderful.
So, yeah.
Wonderful.
So, how's your day been?
That's just a really excellent point to make for our listeners and for us to just talk about, which is, not everybody gets clarity in the same way. Some people can get clarity with just a little subtle piece of information, and other people, require a lot more to have clarity because it takes more for them to be able to make the decision, to be able to reconcile. I'll bet you've been thinking about this for a long time, and lots of little data bits in your head as you've been wrestling with, do I, don't I, is it worth it, should I not, maybe I can fix it, and right?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Oh, it's been going on for months. I had the first thought back in December, and I kept saying, oh, no. I know computers. I know how to fix this. I can get this. I've got this. So kind of like my ego got in the way, I think.
And yet, where it sounds like you are now is that you prioritized yourself over your technical ability or knowledge.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I think we all have, I don't know what you call them, like thresholds. You go beyond a certain threshold, and all of a sudden, what we believed in before, or what we thought before, or what was important before, suddenly shifts, and that's not so important anymore. And I reached one of those thresholds.
Cool.
Yeah. So growth happened. Expansion happened.
Yes, big time expansion. So you were asking me about my day.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about how to describe this, I have had a huge awareness of how I have felt, and I feel as though I'm not completely in my conscious state or wavelength. You know how like there's alpha wavelengths, which are like the most, saying the wrong one. Beta wavelengths are like when you're at your fullest consciousness, very alert and awake. And then like just slightly below that is a different vibrational wavelength called alpha, which that's like a light trance state. We usually drive our car in alpha.
Right. Okay.
Where we're not paying attention and yet we're very paying attention. And that's kind of where I've been today, almost dipping a little bit lower into an even lower wavelength. I mean, I've been staring at my computer screen. I've been working. I've been getting lots of stuff done. But when I consciously say to myself, okay, did you double check blah, blah, blah before you did blah, blah, blah? It's kind of like from a conscious perspective, it's like I couldn't go there consciously. And I would just kind of go, am I ready to send this email? Did I really put everything I need in this email? And, you know, my inner being said, yes, like go for it. So I'm like, okay, and I hit send. But it's been a very different experience because instead of trusting, okay, see, I'm kind of getting some of the insight as I'm speaking. Instead of just trusting my conscious mind to know all the bits of information that are required for me to do my job properly, I kind of was doing my job on autopilot and then checking in with my inner being, like, did I get it all? Did I do it right? I was trusting my signals, which was yes.
So what's the takeaway here?
Well, I think that I've spent more of the day in a space of constant communication with my inner being where I was just checking in and getting the yes or no signals, where I wasn't relying so heavily on my conscious mind.
Okay. So it was like using the connection you have with your inner being just to do the minute by minute, hour by hour, daily routine stuff that you just normally do with your conscious mind.
Yeah, and I don't ever recall being in such a state before. I mean, I think I go in and out of alpha state, but today it's like I just remained there for hours at a time.
Huh.
And it was just a very different experience, very different. So, you know, because I'm always looking for where am I with Project X, I'm just going to take a leap of assumption and say perhaps what I was going through today was kind of a training zone for what I'm going to have or what I'll need as I move forward into the fulfillment of Project X.
Okay. So,
maybe. Don't know.
Well, that sounds good. It sounds good every which way we look at it. Does this mean that you, is this like is this the Project X report in addition to the Wendy's Good Things That Happened Today report?
I guess so, because if I of course, I'm constantly asking, where am I with Project X?
Right.
And I haven't gotten any, like clear response, because sometimes I'll ask and I'll get a phrase or two and I'll go, yep, that's it. And instead it's more like a feeling, like everything's on target. And I don't know how to describe, I'm going to do my best to describe this without giving away what Project X is, because there's certain levels of privacy that are required at this point until Project X actually comes about.
Okay.
But it's kind of like it's like one part of me, like, you know, you've heard the phrase, you know, when one door closes, another one opens.
Right.
Well, Project X for me is one of those kinds of things where there's something in my life that will be coming to an end before Project X can fully move forward. And I would say that every day, and today especially, I have such a strong internal sense of the door closing. It feels like almost like it's done energetically because I see myself moving beyond that. It's kind of like, you know, I had one car and then, you know, you trade it in and you buy another. And so you kind of say goodbye to your car, you empty out the glove box and the console and everything else, and then you stare at it and none of your belongings are in it anymore. To me, that's like the door has closed and then you go over and you get the key and you go into the new one. And I'm kind of feeling energetically that I'm in the place of where the door is closing, and it just feels more solid every single day.
So to put it another way, you're also in the place where the next door is just about to open. I mean, it sounds like it's really imminent.
Yeah, like it's imminent. Because I know for me, if one door closes, the next one's going to open. It's not like I'm going to have a closed door and stand in the middle of, zero ground and go, where am I? It's like I have to be somewhere. I'm either in one thing or another. I'm either in the old car or the new car. I know I won't ever be in the no car.
Yeah, you won't be in a corridor with doors that don't open.
Right. So, when you're dealing with something that's energetic, sometimes there's no real labels for it, and that's kind of where I'm at right now. There's not really a label for where I am, and I'm doing the best I can to describe what it feels like because that seems to be like my only marker or measurement or guide to express to you where I feel I'm at in the process.
Okay. Well, then I guess we'll just have to wait for the next installment tomorrow to find out where's it going.
Exactly. And it wouldn't surprise me if this feeling continues for a while.
Okay.
So
you are going to be kind of in the corridor for a while.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at the calendar. I'm looking at my dates. I got April 1st, and then I told you there was another thing, a precursor, which is around the first week of March. So the first week of March is coming up really quick.
Yeah, it's right around the corner.
And so I'm looking at that. I'm not, denying it or forgetting about it. I'm like, okay, we'll see what happens. And I wonder what I feel like the milestones in this manifestation process of Project X. So we'll see. For me, the first week of March, that could go as far as like the 7th or 8th. So I have about 8 or 9 days to kind of know what that first milestone will be, and if it will come and go with nothing physically manifested, or will there be something more on a energetic level that I may sense? I don't know. We'll find out. So that's it for today's update on Project X.
This update of Project X has been brought to you by... I feel like there should be like a commercial announcement there. Well, actually, we can do a commercial announcement because we do want to remind people that tonight is the third night, once a week nightly call-in. So every Tuesday night, Tom Wells and I are doing a call-in show from 9 to 10 p.m. And so I wanted to put it out there in case people are tuned in now and they want to tune in there at that point because they've always wanted to call in and have a chat with us, but just can't really do it during the day. That's why we set it up. So please do give us a call. Let's talk. Let's find out what's going on in your life tonight. That's 9 p.m. Eastern time. Every Tuesday night we're doing this, and it's here on LOA Today.
And if our listeners have not yet listened to a show with you and Tom, I have to say that the shows that I've listened to, they've always been very, I was about to say entertaining, and they are, but Tom is a very different kind of life coach from me, and he has some really brilliant things to say, and he says them sometimes so much more articulately than I do, that I really enjoy listening to you with all your different co-hosts because each one brings something very different to the table. And
really?
Yeah.
And it's
anyway,
fun.
That's my plug for our show with you,
thank
Tom.
you. Yeah, absolutely. And I have to tell you, from my perspective, co-hosting with all of you guys, boy, does it stretch me. I mean, I have to be ready for a completely different viewpoint every single show, and that's good. It gives me, the incentive to okay, let's go do this because it's fun. It keeps it fresh. It keeps it sharp. It keeps it interesting. And I think it probably is for listeners as well. I hope it is. But, boy, I know it is for me. I can tell you that much.
Well, I'm glad that we keep you on your toes, Walt.
You definitely
do. I'm
do.
always surprised from show to show. I mean, because you and I do 5 shows a week. And I'm just always shocked at the different viewpoints that you come up with that surprise me. I'm like, oh, well, I didn't expect that. Well, that's kind of interesting. Like yesterday's show was really, really, really
that
fun
was wild yesterday.
because we had very different perspectives. So, I love that.
That was really wild yesterday. I'm not sure how we reproduced that, but that was something we got to keep in mind because you're right. It was exciting. It was interesting. It was fun. It was different. But I think that's also part of what happens when I have the different co-hosts because I pick up different things from each of you guys. So if I pick up something from you and I use it with Cindy, or if I pick up something from Cindy, I use it with Joel, or pick up something with Joel, I use it with Tom, and it just kind of works its way through. And so I think that's where part of it is coming from, that I just get all these different perspectives, and it stimulates new ideas in me. So I just come back to you each time, or to Cindy or to Joel, and say, well, what do you think about this? This is what I picked up from Tom or something.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I hear you during our show saying things like, oh, well, when I was talking to Cindy this morning, we talked about blah, 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 and then you bring it into our show.
Right.
Well, it somehow never dawned on me that you would talk about me on someone else's show. I mean, you've talked about everybody else with me, but I was listening to a show with you and Cindy the other day, and then all of a sudden you said something like, well, Wendy and I were talking just about blah, blah, blah yesterday. I'm like, oh, my God, I never thought about it being reversed.
Well, it does, doesn't it?
So I can now vouch for what you just said.
That's right.
You do bring each one of us into different shows.
I do. And I have to say, it makes it easy for me, too, because, we're talking about something, and I just recall, oh, yeah, we were just talking about that the other day. And there it is. I got my next comment to make. So it makes it really easy for me. But.
That's nice.
Now, let's see. Yesterday, when we were talking about the law of attraction, the basics of the teachings of Abraham yesterday, we got through quite a few of the subsections. And quite honestly, the two of us couldn't remember if we did the subsection called Must I Take Their Good and Their Bad? So if we did, we're going to do it again without any apologies whatsoever because, hey, it's a good section. Why not? So I'll do Jerry and then you'll do Abraham?
Okay.
All right. So Jerry says, to what degree are we a part of what someone whom we're associated with has attracted, wanted or unwanted? In other words, how much does another person whom we're associated with bring into our life what they've attracted, the things that we want or the things that we don't want?
And then Abraham says, nothing can come into your life without your attention to it. Most people, however, are not very selective about the aspects of others to which they give their attention. In other words, if you notice everything about someone else, then you are inviting all of those aspects into your experience. If you give your attention only to the things that you most like about them, you will invite into your experience only those things. If someone is in your life, you have attracted them. And while it is sometimes difficult to believe, you also attract everything about your experience with them. For nothing can come into your experience without your personal attraction of it.
Yeah,
yes, we did
hard.
Do this yesterday.
I think we did. Yes, I think we did.
I got to I read this whole thing before the show, and I went, I don't remember any of it. But you know what? You had me read Abraham's part yesterday, and when I started reading the end of it, I'm like, oh yeah, this is sounding very familiar. But you know what? I wanted to throw out this caveat.
Oh, what's that?
Because I was in this bizarre state today where I felt not my normal consciousness. I want to say I don't know where this is going to take me in the show because I don't know if I'm going to be fully conscious or if I'm going to be a little entranced while we do this. And I think when I read this chapter, right as we were getting ready to go on, I read it and it's like nothing conscious connected with me.
Trance it is.
Yeah, here we go into trance. So anyway, I do recall that we did a good job of talking through that subject yesterday, so let's move forward.
We can move forward, especially since I remember yesterday I was confused by Jerry's question, and I'm just as confused today. So definitely a good thing to move forward.
All righty.
So let's see. The next section is, should I resist not evil? And this is a bit of a dialogue between Jerry and Abraham. So Jerry says, so we don't really need to repel any negatives. We have to attract what we want.
And Abraham says, it is not possible to push things that you do not want away from you, because in the pushing against them, you are actually activating the vibration of them and therefore attracting them. Everything in this universe is attraction-based. In other words, there is no such thing as exclusion. When you shout no at those things you do not want, you are actually inviting those unwanted things into your experience. When you shout yes at the things that you do want, you are actually inviting those things into your experience.
Jerry says, well, that's where that saying, resist ye not evil, probably came from.
Which I don't even know what that phrase means. Do you?
I'm really quite lost, actually. Jerry's been confusing me the last couple pages, and resist ye not evil.
Resist ye not evil. Resist ye not evil.
Which sounds like a Old Testament way of saying just, don't push back at evil.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. That actually helped a little bit.
Oh, okay. Good. Maybe you can explain the rest of it.
So Abraham says, if you are resisting anything, you are focused upon it, pushing against it, and activating the vibration of it, and therefore attracting it. And so it would not be a good idea to do that with anything that you do not want. Resist ye not evil would also be spoken by someone wise enough to understand that what humans call evil does not exist.
Yeah, now that part I can resonate with. That part makes a great deal of sense to me. And it's a significant little piece in my life because back in the day when I was just getting exposed to the law of attraction and dealing with, okay, so what's this LOA stuff all about and how does it all work and what's all this stuff about energy and so forth. At that point in time, I had been feeling for quite some time that I was being, controlled by evil. For the first time in my life, I never really believed in that before, but I had so many things going wrong. I said, there's got to be some sort of malevolent force that's out to get me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I do know what you mean. That's interesting. And I remember having a debate, if you will, with a dear friend of mine years ago where because she is very churched, she's a very solid Christian, believes what the Bible says, believes in the devil, believes in evil. We were having this debate about the word evil. And she was saying how there's so much evil in the world. And I really do take the approach that Abraham talks about, which is there's no such thing as evil. There's just a lack of goodness or the lack of love or whatever word you want to use as the opposite of evil. And, we went round and round on this one. And I said, I was trying to explain really the very point that we just read because I really at that point was understanding it, which is, when Abraham says this is not a world of exclusion, that in itself is kind of a funky sentence, and I had to break that down and really work on understanding it. Mm-hmm. But in the flip side, they say it's a world of inclusion.
Right.
So the only thing we can ever do is create. You can't discreate. You can add, you can't subtract. So anytime you create something new to focus on, it's there. And if ever you don't want it anymore, you can't just delete it out of your understanding. The only way to deactivate something once it's been created is by moving your focused attention elsewhere, which I think is really kind of fascinating.
Well, then here's a question for you, because as you're saying that, I'm realizing there is a potential gap, and maybe it's just a gap in my understanding, but I think a lot of people would react this way. If you really can't do anything like that after you create it, then how do we explain somebody who literally goes out of their way to destroy stuff, like in war or blowing things up or whatever? Because in a sense, that's destroying the creation. How do we understand that?
Well, can you just give me a little bit more technical? Like what specifically are you talking about is destroyed?
Well, for instance, if let's see, if you look at a war, and in a war, a bunch of buildings get blown to pieces while the attack is going on against certain soldiers that are inside the region where those buildings are. So those buildings that were created have now since been destroyed. So how do we explain that in terms of what Abraham is saying?
That is a good question, Walt. I'm sure that I don't know that I really know. I mean, because it's about energy, and you cannot destroy energy. You can transmute or change the shape or form of energy, but you can't ever destroy energy. So, I mean, if we were just to play with this little nugget that you proposed, so we have a building and now the building is not. But I don't know, because we can still remember the building. Does that mean the building still exists? Perhaps.
I don't know. It's a good question. I know this.
I don't know either.
I'm not so sure about matter, but like you said, energy, you can't really destroy energy. You can only create energy. So that's where the theory starts to make sense to me. And if we look at the application of energy to the creation of matter, in other words, matter is in this case understood as energy that's been shaped into a particular form and stays in that form until we change that form, then the creation never really got destroyed. What got destroyed was the form of what came out of that creation. But the creation itself, which was the creation of the energy, that didn't get destroyed. The energy didn't go away. It's just the mass got changed. The shape of the mass got changed.
That makes sense to me. I'm thinking about like now in more non-tangible things, like if you think about some occurrence or a circumstance that happened to you many years ago, in a relationship or in a conversation, and let's say you feel like you have lasting effects because of what was said or done in a relationship, in a way that's still there, even though much time has transpired, but you can't make what happened not happen, but you can move your focus to something else so you're not activating the thing that happened many years ago.
Okay.
That to me, that's the key point that I take out of what Abraham says, which is if this is truly a world of inclusion and not exclusion, whenever you focus on something or you think up a new thought, it's there. And maybe when I say think up a new thought, I don't even know that the thought is brand new, but it might be brand new to me. Like maybe I've never had the thought before just because.
Okay.
But like back to the idea of is there evil versus not, I know one of the illustrations Abraham has talked about is that, we flip on the light switch in a bedroom, let's say, and the light comes on, but there is no dark switch to turn on the dark.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
The dark is simply the absence of light. And so light always exists, and when you choose not to be focused on light, then there is darkness. And that's kind of how I think of good and evil, all there is goodness and well-being. And when you choose to look away from that, then it could appear to you as though there is evil or darkness.
Well, there's a theory I want to bring up. It's kind of like the culmination of how I thought about this for the longest time, trying to iron it out in a way that made sense to me. But before I bring it up, there are a couple more exchanges here in this section. So let's do those, and then I'll bring it up, okay? So Jerry says, Abraham, what would be your definition of the word evil?
And Abraham says, there would be no reason for the word evil to be in our vocabulary because there is nothing that we are aware of that we would label with that word. When humans use the word, they usually mean that which opposes good. We've noticed that when humans use the word evil, they mean something that opposes their idea of what is good or what is God. Evil is that which one believes is not in harmony with what they want.
And Jerry says, and good?
And Abraham says, good is that which one believes they do want. You see, good and evil are only ways of defining wanted and unwanted. And wanted and unwanted only apply to the individual doing the wanting. It gets tricky when humans get involved in the wanting of others, and even trickier when they attempt to control the desires of others.
I very much agree with that part. No doubt about that. The trickiness shows up in every aspect of human life. But I'm intrigued by what they wrote there because and this is why I wanted to read this first, because it does kind of tie into what I've been thinking about it. What I was thinking is there is on the surface an apparent paradox in the way Abraham discusses energy, particularly source energy. On the one hand, it's all positive energy. They've said that a number of times. On the other hand, they, like humans, refer to positive and negative energy. And I'm saying, well, wait a minute. If it's all positive, then it can't be positive and negative, right? That on the surface, that seems to be the case. So I spent quite a bit of time trying to iron out that paradox. And what I came up with is this. In fact, there is no such thing as positive or negative source energy. There's only positive. Source energy is positive source energy, and there's no such thing as negative. So where does the negative energy come into it? Well, that's where the human preferences come in. I mean, they talked about it in their second answer there, that good is that which one believes that they do want. Good and evil are only ways of defining wanted and unwanted. So positive source energy is wanted source energy, or source energy that's going in a direction that's wanted. Negative energy or negative source energy is really just positive source energy, but it's just not wanted. And so we call it negative. But it really isn't negative. It's just positive energy that we don't want.
Okay, I'm thinking on this. So, negative is often referred to in terms of our emotions. I mean, because really, I'm just totally exploring this. Is it possible for us to label anything as negative without having some kind of a feeling attached to why we would call it negative? And vice versa, that if we call something positive or good, it's because we actually have a positive or good feeling that we associated with it?
I think it would be really unusual, although I can think of two instances where we do it, and for the most part we don't have an emotional attachment. And that's where we talk about positive or negative electricity terminals and positive and negative magnetic terminals or magnetic fields. But
I think when we're talking about whether we ascribe the label of whether something's good or bad, or wanted or unwanted,
as long as that's the case, as long as that's the case,
I don't know if the terminal thing comes into play
because we really don't think of those as good or bad. Yeah, exactly. It's not like, well, that's a plus terminal, so that's a good terminal.
Yeah, because we're not ascribing emotions to electricity.
Exactly.
Except I like electricity. Electricity good.
That's right. No electricity, not so good.
Yeah, because when it goes out, it's bad.
That's right.
See, that's an emotional response.
Exactly. Yeah.
So if we're ascribing good or bad, well-being or evil, as something that we have an emotional response to, and that's why we call it good or bad, then I think we can use Abraham's idea that the feeling that we have is based on the relationship that we are focused on as compared to how our inner being or our source energy is focused on that same thing.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So if we're in alignment and both our source and us, the human, the physical self, we're both focused on the same thing in the same way, then there would be no gap. We'd be on the same page, and it would be of a positive nature that we would be feeling in our physical self. Whereas if we feel some kind of negative emotion, it's because our inner being source self is holding a different viewpoint than what we, the physical self, are viewing.
Mm-hmm.
And that gap, and the width of the gap, if you will, determines where on the negative scale we are.
Sure.
If we're just a little peeved, we're not that far away from where our source energy is thinking. But if we're like really ticked off or really frustrated or in anger or revenge or despair, then there's a big gap.
Right. Yeah.
And so I think evil is where we are looking at something very, very differently than how our source being is looking at it. Would you agree?
That's an interesting conclusion. I think I do agree. Yeah. Which is fascinating, really, because when we maintain the idea in our mind at the same time as we think about what you just said, if we maintain the idea that our inner being always looks at us in the most positive light, always observes what we're involved with in the most positive way, then to experience an evil, so to speak, in the way that you described, it means we're physically in a really, really bad place. And that's what makes it evil.
Right. And we're choosing to focus on aspects of whatever is in front of us in a way that our inner being just absolutely does not focus in that same way.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know.
Which means ultimately we created the evil.
Yeah, son of a gun.
It's like you can never get away from the personal responsibility with this thing.
Well, you know, and that kind of says that, you know, whenever we feel something that's in a positive way, we created the positive feeling because we're choosing to look on something in a way that is the same as how our inner being looks at it. And we create the negative feeling because we're choosing to look at this thing very differently than how our inner being is looking at it.
That's right.
So whether we're feeling good or bad, we created it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Now, there is another piece to this. So I want to bring this other piece in and see how you tie it in. The other piece is that Abraham, on at least 2 or 3 occasions that I have seen or heard, has said that when we are feeling negative emotion, particularly strong negative emotion, what has happened is that our inner being, which always looks at the positives of everything, has expanded due to focus on some thought or thing or event or person or whatever, whereas our physical being has resisted that expansion. And that is part and parcel with being out of alignment. It's part of how we feel the emotion of it. Well, if that's the case, then at what point do we say we not only need to get back into alignment, but we also need to get back into a similar level of expansion? Because, I mean, if our inner being keeps expanding, and our physical being is saying, no, you know, the inner being, by that measure, is expanding a lot faster than the physical being is. And that's where the emotional discord is happening. Doesn't that mean at some point we have to kind of catch up?
We don't have to, but it sure would feel better if we do.
It would, yes, right. It would feel a whole lot better. I guess that's what I meant, but yeah.
Just based on that, just to kind of put it in another way of looking at it, whenever we experience something we don't like, it is typical for us to stay focused on, I don't like this, I don't like this, I don't like this. And what we're not always aware of, because it happens kind of invisibly outside of our physical eyes, is that we shoot off an energetic, vibrational desire for what we're preferring in that moment, that in the physical self we're going, I don't like this, I don't like this, I don't like this. So if energetically we're sending off, hey, but here's what I would like, our inner being immediately grabs it and says, got it, I'm now living in the what I do like, what I do want. And so in that moment, yeah, there is a huge gap. If we're fixated on, I don't like this, I don't like this, I don't like this, and our inner being is like, ooh, this is yummy and wonderful, ooh, love this new stuff, you know? I mean, think about it. If you're with somebody and you are hot and you really would love an ice cream cone to like cool yourself off, and you look across the street and you see somebody just licking an ice cream cone and swirling it around their tongue, you're like, I hate you because you have that which I desire. Well, that's kind of what happens in our life, where we're so stuck on, I'm hot, I'm miserable, this is horrible, and you see somebody who's just enjoying, you know, something that's refreshing and causing them to feel cool, and they're in joy. We do that like all the time. I mean, that's, to me, I don't know about you, but I really love that metaphor I just came up with.
I do. I think it's a good one.
I can really get into understanding that. Like, if my inner being is across the street enjoying the ice cream cone that I wish I could have, and I don't have one, and I'm hot and miserable, well, yeah, no wonder there's a lot of negative emotion. But
now,
you know what?
Now I'm going to try to tie them together. Oh, well, go ahead. Finish what you're saying. Go ahead.
I was going to say, but let's say I walk across the street That's called pivoting my attention. Instead of I'm pissed off because I don't have an ice cream cone, what if I walk across the street and the person who has one ice cream cone just happens to have another one and hands it to me? And now we're both on the other side of the street together, licking our ice cream cones and just really feeling refreshed and rejuvenated. Okay, that's called alignment.
That's true.
And so it takes a physical act of being on, I'm going to call it the wrong side of the street, where it's hot and muggy and yicky, and turning my attention to the side of the street where the ice cream cones are, and walking over and partaking. That was a fun metaphor.
It is. So while we're taking a walk on the ice cream side of the street, I want to take advantage of the fact that I think I can tie these concepts together a little bit. See what you think about this. I was talking before about how there really isn't any such thing as negative energy, but we tend to think of it as negative energy when we're in that out of alignment place, which you just very nicely described in terms of ice cream. And you don't have the ice cream and you're out of alignment, you're angry about it, right? We also talk about how when we get over to the ice cream side of the street and have that delicious ice cream, now we're snapping right back into alignment, and it's like the surge of energy. Well, that's the key phrase. There's a surge of energy. I wonder if another way to define negative energy is a lack of energy.
Well, okay, here's where I might not agree with that. And again, we're just exploring and playing, right?
Sure, right.
So I think it takes a lot of energy, at least this is how I have phrased it. It takes a lot of energy to stay angry, because I notice that the moment I give up the anger, I feel light and buoyant and refreshed. So it's like stress is using up a lot of energy, and it doesn't feel good. So I think there's a lot of energy involved in being unhappy. And then I believe maybe perhaps when I moved to the ice cream side of the street, it's not that the energy went away, but it transformed into refreshing. And instead of it causing me to feel downtrodden, now it gives me a sense of excitement. I don't know. What do you think of that?
I think you just undermined my theory really nicely.
Well, it's all about exploration. Well, that's
right.
all we're doing.
Is. It definitely is. The only thing I can think of to contribute is there's an old song called The Sunny Side of the Street, and if we rewrite it as the ice cream side of the street, then the lyrics would go something like, grab your coat, don't forget your hat, leave your worries by the doorstep, because life's sweet and really deep when you're on the ice cream side of the street. And that works.
There you go. You know, it's going to make us look at ice cream in a whole new way.
Apologies to the person who wrote the song, whose lyrics I'm stealing and mangling terribly. Okay. So
that was fun, by the way.
That is fun, yeah. Well, that's one of the reasons we do this. It's a lot of fun. We've got, let's see, we got about 15 minutes left. Do you think we have enough time to do the next section? It's like a page and a half, a little bit over, something like that. Maybe almost 2 pages.
Well, let's just jump in and see where it takes us.
Okay. Well, this section is called How Do I Find Out What I Really Want? Which is an excellent question, by the way. And it's one that we need to ask more often, I think, all of us.
And, you know, I'll tell you why that's such a big question. I would say I have spent more time in my life knowing what I don't want.
Yes.
And saying, what is it I do want? What is it I do want? Because even Project X, I cannot yet define by what I totally want. I know the essence or the feeling, but I don't know what that will look like when it's a three-dimensional form.
All the more reason to ask then. So,
yeah.
Okay, well, here's what Jerry asks. Jerry asks, one of the most common concerns I've heard over the years is people saying, well, I just don't know what I want. Well, how do we know what we want?
And Abraham says, you have come forth into this physical life experience with the intention of experiencing the variety and contrast for the very purpose of determining your own personal preferences and desires.
So Jerry asks again, could you give us an idea of a process we could use to find out what we want?
And Abraham says, your life experience is continually helping you identify what you want. Even as you are keenly aware of something that you do not want, in that moment you are becoming more clear about that which you do want. And it is helpful to make a statement I want to know what I want. Because in your conscious awareness of that intention, the attraction process is intensified.
Jerry,
I want to stop there.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
I want to stop there for a second because that's something I've used quite often. I didn't realize I was using it. Maybe I learned it from this book. I don't know. But that to me points out that when you don't know something, it is totally acceptable to just ask, what is it I do want? And you don't have to get the answer right away. But if you focus on the question, what is it I do want, and get really curious, because I want to know what I want. I know I just experienced a whole pile of contrast and things I don't like, but I don't yet know how to clarify what my preferences were from that situation or what they are. And I sure would like to know because I'd like to move to the other side of the street. It's just that I'm not quite sure which side of the street I'm supposed to move to because, you could be walking down the median and not know if you need to go to the right or the left. And so it's totally cool to just throw out the question, what is it I really want? What is it I really want? And then let go of the question. And usually when you get into a receptive place, clarity starts to show up and you start to get some insight as to what it is you prefer.
Okay, well, let me throw a monkey wrench in because I have on numerous occasions gotten so frustrated that I finally gave in and said, okay, I want to know what I want. So universe, give me a clue here. Tell me what do I want? And then here's the rub. Here's the monkey wrench. I forget that I asked the question. And then an answer comes somewhere down the line, and I forgot that I even asked the question. So when the answer comes, I don't recognize it. And then I set myself up the next time. Well, I still don't know what I want. What do I want? Do you sense a cycle here?
Yeah. I've been on that cycle before, and I think part of the remedy is tuning in to the thoughts that we have and getting greater awareness. And so if you get an insight and you don't know what it's attached to, you know what? You can ask, what do I do with this?
Okay. So
because you can ask anything.
So you can basically get the universe to be your little nudge, giving you the nudge saying, you asked this one a week ago.
Yes. Or say, you know what? This is really a brilliant idea and I really love it. I'm just really curious. When did I ask for this? Like, what was the circumstance that caused this manifestation to pop up in my head? And then let go of it. And you'll get an answer or you won't. Now, I believe you will, but whether you are aware of it or not is completely up to you.
Well, it's also part of your development.
You bring up a really excellent point. I think we do get answers to questions all the time. And just kind of like a puzzle, we don't know where to fit that puzzle piece into our giant 1,000-piece puzzle.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know that I must be getting lots of answers because I put out lots of questions. But from my perspective, it seems like I'm only getting an occasional answer to an occasional question, which tells me I'm missing the boat on a whole lot of answers that come through. I just completely miss them entirely. And that's very, it's very fractured. It's very confusing because now I don't even know what the conversation is, if you understand what I mean. Because I can't remember what I was asking. I can't remember where I am in the conversation. It's just like, it's very fractionalized.
I do understand that. And I've heard Abraham say many times that the vibration of the question is a very different vibration from the answer. And so oftentimes they'll say, ask the question and then let go of it so that you can later be in a receiving mode and then you receive it. And they've even gone so far as to say Jerry was the question asker and Abraham was the answerer and Esther was the receiver of the answer. All three of them they can be in different vibrational places.
Yeah.
And that made sense to me for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But then I started to wonder, there are times that I ask a question and I get an immediate answer. I ask another one, I get an immediate answer. And I know that they were saying the question is a different vibration from the answer. So how do I account for that?
Mm.
And even the other day I was listening to an Abraham CD and Abraham was talking about one of Esther's experiences and saying, Esther was asking some questions and Abraham was, giving her immediate response. And I went, see, that's what I do. Now, what's up with that? Because I thought Abraham said they're on different wavelengths or different vibrations. So instead of thinking to myself, well, I'll just have to wait for Abraham to answer this question. Hello, I have an inner being who knows everything, infinite intelligence, on speed dial. So I just asked myself, or I asked my inner being, I said, okay, so what's up with this? How is it that sometimes we're able to dialogue so beautifully that there's zero interruption? I don't have to wait to get into a receiving mode. It seems as though I'm in a receiving mode when I'm actually asking the question. And what came to me, and this isn't it just came to me yesterday. It's I've asked this question a number of times because I really want to be sure. And what came to me is when I am in a state of no resistance, when I ask a question because there's no resistance, I'm also simultaneously in a receiving state. And that's why I can have a back and forth dialogue with my inner being quite easily when I'm not resistant. Now, on the flip side, if something gets me really agitated and I'm asking questions, that is not generally the time I'm going to get any kind of productive answer. And so that's when, if I'm in a frustrated, agitated place, I throw out the question and then I let go and I wait until I'm in a better space. And it's not like I can just decide when I'm going to hear my inner being, but when I get back into my normal, happy, buoyant self, that's when the answers generally flow. And I will say, because you're talking about this just disjointed kind of experience, because I naturally bounce back into a good vibration, therefore I'm in a receiving mode, the time lapse between me asking the question when I was agitated and the time when I'm in a receptive mode and I can receive the answer has become very small. Sometimes I can get the answer in 15 minutes. Sometimes I can get it in an hour. It just depends on how long it takes me to get back into a happy place.
Which is certainly helpful because now you can follow the conversation. It may be a little bit slow because it's taking 15 minutes or an hour, but that's still a lot faster than most of us who are waiting days and then can't remember what the question was.
But the best place to ask questions is when you're in meditation or you've done at least 15 minutes of meditation. Because when you're in a meditative zone, you have the whole purpose of meditation is to release all resistance. So when you've done that and you're feeling really good and you feel light and you have a sense of well-being and you feel like you're connected to all that is, that's a great time to ask a question because you generally will not be reintroducing into your vibration something of a negative quality. You can usually ask it from a more neutral place. Oh yeah, that thing the other day that really upset me. I'd really like to get some insight on that. Now you can tell I'm purposely using my tone of voice to indicate that when I ask this question while I've just been through meditation, I'm in a much better feeling place. However, it is also possible that even though you've just meditated, you're feeling awesome, well-being abounds in your world in that moment, you're vibrating in a great space. If you are really angry about something, you can drag that anger energy right into the heels of your meditation space, and boom, you have just popped out of being in the receptivity mode, and now you're back into anger mode. It's very possible to do that.
Oh, yeah.
So all of these things I've just shared really require that you start to recognize what it feels like when you're in a non-resistant state of being. And simultaneously that you recognize when you're in a pinched off kind of vibration.
Or to simplify it, avoid asking questions like that at the time we most want to, which is when we're most frustrated.
Or I say go ahead and ask it.
Well,
don't be expecting the answer.
Don't expect the answer, right? Yeah, exactly. Well, I don't want to ask the question at that point because all I'm doing is setting myself up to be confused later on when the answer shows up, and I say, okay, what's that an answer to?
Well, and for you specifically, Walt, because I think you've asked a really great question, which is, or brought up kind of a dilemma. What do I do with answers that I'm receiving kind of out of context because I don't know what they fit? I don't know what context they fit to anymore.
Right.
maybe start asking for you to have greater clarity in that department so that you can put the puzzle pieces together in a way that feels comfortable for you.
Yeah, I think it is about asking for greater clarity. I also think it's about putting myself in greater clarity. I mean, we do have the ability, Abraham keeps emphasizing this, we do have the ability to decide how we're going to feel in any given situation. So why not actually take a moment and get ourselves into the good feeling place and then ask the question?
And, I wonder how many people are listening that say, and how the heck do you do that?
Well, we should probably go back to the basics then. So how do we do that? I know how I do it.
And why don't you share? What's your practice? When you feel like you're not in a good place and you want to deliberately shift your energy into a better feeling place, how do you do it?
I have a cheat sheet. And my cheat sheet is my list, usually a pretty small list, but it's a list of things that I can go to at a moment's notice whenever I notice that I need to get to a positive place. It's my little list of things I can go to get a quick movement in a positive direction. And on that cheat sheet includes things like listening to positive music. So if I'm in a really bad place, and I actually did this a couple weekends ago, I was not feeling good at all. I wasn't like depressed or anything, but I was definitely not in a positive frame of mind. So as soon as I recognized that, I just went and into the bedroom, lay down, put on headphones, and just listened to my positive music list for about an hour. And you know what? I came out of it. In fact, I was feeling really good after I got out, and I could barely even remember why I was feeling so down in the first place. So for me, that's a very effective modality. Another one that I like is watching some of my favorite comedy. Like I like watching Robin Williams in particular, things that he did. I don't like everything he did, but the stuff that was the cleaner stuff, I loved that because he was just, doing his flight of fancy, whatever's coming into his mind kind of stand-up comedy. And you never knew what was going to come out of his mouth when he did that. And it was great. I loved it. And so there's another way that I can get myself moving quickly into a more positive space. If I'm not at home or not someplace where I can get access to one of those things, I will try to find some way to be in conversation with somebody and tell a joke. Because if I can get somebody else to laugh, I invariably laugh myself. If I can't get somebody else to laugh, then it's a really miserable time. But if I can get somebody else to laugh, then it's a lot easier. See, I got you to do a laugh there, and instantly I started to laugh too. That's another one of my go-to things. Okay, so I have these go-to things, my little short list. So whenever I find myself in that bad place, what do? I say, stop. I just noticed that I am focusing on something that doesn't serve me, that makes me feel rotten, that makes me feel bad, and I don't want to be there. So I'm just going to stop whatever it is I'm doing. If it's a conversation, a thought pattern, an activity, I don't care what it is, I'm going to stop and I'm going to say, okay, what's on my short list of positive things to do? And then grab one of them and do it as soon as I can. That's my method.
That's brilliant. That is brilliant. Those are excellent strategies. I do things that are very similar to that. But the fact that you have pre-prepared, it's like you've proactively come up with things to do so that when you need them, they're available to you. And that is a really cool.
Well, you know where I got that from? I actually got that from my wife. Because, as you know, Louise was a psychotherapist for 10 years. And she helped a lot of people out with 12-step programs and overcoming alcohol-related stuff and so on and so forth. And one of the things that she learned through her own explorations of anorexia and all the food-related kinds of issues, she learned very early to have a safe meal for herself because she actually dealt with some stuff like that. She had those kinds of issues. And the safe meals that she would pick would be really easy for her to make, stuff that she could whip together in about 2 minutes. Well, maybe not 2 minutes, but certainly within 5 minutes. And they were quick, they were easy, they didn't take any thought. And so if she was in a bad place and she knew she needed to get a meal, she would go to one of her safe meals. That's where I got the concept from, and it works brilliantly.
That's great. Hey, how are we doing on time?
We're actually over.
Okay.
But this has been great. I'm glad you mentioned it. This has been great. Let's do it again tomorrow.
I'll be here.
I will as well. We hope you would join us as well here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye now.